like, comment, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching.
You gotta feel that heat, and we can ride the boogie, share that beat of love. I will rock.
Order granting states MOTIQN to admit other acts under OCGA 524-4413, and Section 244-4041 Section 1. The above-mentioned case came before the court on the state's motion to admit prior act evidence against defendant Eligio Bishop. A hearing was held on January 25, 2024, wherein all parties were present. The court held the matter under advisement pending further briefs by the state and defense. Having reviewed the evidence, the briefs, and the entire record, the court hereby finds and decides as follows. Defendant Eligio Bishop was indicted on charges of rape, false imprisonment, and transmitting sexually explicit images and videos stemming from an incident that occurred on or about March 24, 2022. The relevant allegations are that Bishop, the alleged leader of a spiritual group identified as Carbon Nation, confined the victim, an alleged member of the group, against her will and raped her. At some point the victim was able to get away, and several days afterwards the defendant allegedly posted explicit sexual videos of her online. Prior acts evidence of sexual assault. The state is first seeking to admit evidence that prior to the instant act, Bishop sexually assaulted other group members. At the hearing the state produced 3 witnesses. KC, BJ and VMKC testified that the defendant forced her to engage in oral sex against her will. KC further testified that she subsequently engaged in sexual intercourse with the defendant on several occasions and that her consent was obtained through fear of physical harm if she did not consent. BJ testified that the defendant forced her to engage in anal sex, during which she was injured. BJ explained that she did not want to have anal sex with the defendant and that she felt she did not have a choice but to comply because she was intimidated by the defendant's violent nature. VM corroborated BJ, in that VM recalled helping to treat BJ's injury following the assault. BJ testified that she left the group shortly after the assault. KC's and BJ's testimony is sufficient for a jury to find that the defendant sexually assaulted them. The state seeks to admit this testimony under Section OCGA 244-413, which holds that, in a criminal proceeding in which the accused is accused of an offense of sexual assault, evidence of the accused commission of another offense of sexual assault shall be admissible and may be considered for its bearing on any matter to which it is relevant. Rule 413. Evidence, like all authentities relevant evidence, is subject to a balancing test under OCGA Section 244-403. However, exclusion under Rule 403 is an extraordinary remedy, particularly when the evidence is already strongly presumed to be admissible. State v. Eligio 300. 66 GAAP 501-500, 4 2023. Code Section 413 established a rule of inclusion, with a strong presumption in favor of admissibility, and proving one's propensity to commit sex crimes or an inappropriate lustful disposition are legally permissible purposes for admitting evidence of this sort. D. Here, the balancing test tilts in favor of admissibility of the prior alleged sexual assaults. When a defendant invokes the defense of consent, or attempts to attack the victim's credibility as the defendant did in his statement to the police, the prosecutorial need for 413 evidence is high. In such a case, 413 evidence is admissible even if the facts were somewhat dissimilar. McAllister v. State, 351 GAAP 76, 2019. Statutory rape conviction from 15 years prior, when the defendant was 17 years old, admissible in rape case involving the defendant's daughter. In the instant case, the defendant's propensity to engage in sexual contact with non-consenting women in his group is highly probative to the issue of whether the victim consented on the occasion charged in the indictment. CEG, Berrien v. State, 364 GAAP 217, 2022. The offenses are relatively close in time, spanning from late 2018 to early 2022. The women themselves were similar. They were all female, close in age, early to mid 205, black, petite and similar in appearance. The circumstances through which the defendant encountered them were also similar, and the control and power he wielded over them as members of the group of which he was the leader, was similar. CEG, Williams v. State, 366 GAAP 114, 2022. The evidence is strong to disprove a claim of fabrication because it shows that this defendant preyed on women in the victim's circumstance. See Critlow v. State, 339 Gallap 353, 2016. Accordingly, the state's motion to admit the evidence of other prior sexual assaults under Rule 413 is granted. LL. Prior acts evidence of physical assault. The court turns next to the state's basis for admission of the defendant's alleged prior acts of physical assault under OCGA Section 244-404, B. Rule 404, B. provides that evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts shall not be admissible to prove the character of a person in order to show action in conformity therewith. It may, however, be admissible for other purposes including but not limited to proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, or absence of mistake or accident. In evaluating potential evidence under 404, B, the court should examine the overall similarity between the other acts and the charged crimes, the other act's temporal remoteness, and the prosecutorial need for the evidence. Thomas v. State 314 Ga 681, 684, 2022. Much like in Rule 413, if a prior act is found to be admissible under Rule 404, B, the court must also find that the probative value of the prior act is not substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice to the defendant. Evidence of prior domestic violence is generally admissible to show a defendant's motive to control intimate partners through violence. Smart v. State, 299 Ga 414, 2016. Burns v. State, 268 Ga App 642, 648 649, 2023. Chambers v. State, 351 Ga App 771, 775, 2019. Freeman v. State 365 Ga App 332, 342, 2022. The other acts showed defendant's willingness to use physical violence against female victims whom he knew in an attempt to intimidate them or bend them to his will when they did not accede to his demands or were often nice acting against his wishes. Harris v. State, 338 Ga App 778, 2016. Olds v. State, 340 Ga App 401, 2017. Flowers v. State, 307 Ga 618, 2020. United States v. Farish, 535 F3D 815, 819, 80 2008. In the instant case, KC, BJ, and VM all testified that they observed the defendant be physically violent with women in his group. All three testified that the threat of violence was omnipresent in the group and that the defendant demanded compliance with his rules and dictates. BJ testified to seeing the defendant beat VM just prior to the defendant anally raping BJ. BJ explained that she was intimidated by the defendant and knew that he would resort to violence if she did not go along with what he wanted since she had just seen him beat VM. VM testified in detail to being beaten, having her child taken from her prior to beatings, and recounted the beating that BJ described. All three women testified that the defendant used threats of violence to ensure compliance from the women in his group. The court finds that this threat of violence is more probative to the issue of consent or lack thereof than it is prejudicial to defendant. Further, the prosecutorial need for this evidence is high, as it helps to explain why the victim and the other women acted in the ways that they did. Also, the acts described are less serious than the charged offenses, both legally and to a layperson, such as a potential juror, lessening the risk that the jury would be inclined to convict on an improper basis. Based on the foregoing, the state's motion to admit the other acts is granted. Prior acts evidence of the transmission of sexually explicit videos. Last, the state is seeking the admission of evidence that defendant posted prohibited videos of victim VM. VM testified that shortly after she left the defendant's group she learned that the defendant had posted videos to Instagram depicting VM and the defendant engaged in oral sex. VM also suspects the defendant posted a similar video to the website Pornhub. The court finds that this evidence is also admissible under Rule 404, B supra, as it tends to show the defendant's intent, motive, and his absence of mistake. First, the defendant placed intent at issue by pleading not guilty. See Moody v. State 361 Ga App 737, 741, 2021. Secondly, the context in which the defendant transmitted the video of VM was remarkably like the context in which he posted the videos of the victim. Both women had their videos shared to the defendant's thousands of followers on a social media platform within days of them leaving his group. This is relevant. 1. To show his intent to harass the victim, and 2. His motive in transmitting the videos was to obtain revenge for leaving him. See Anthony v. State 298 Ga 827, 2016. In a murder case, evidence of prior threatening acts such as cutting tires and brandishing a knife towards the victim's paramour were admissible to show the defendant's desire to take revenge and provoke confrontation. Like in Ain Thonai, the defendant's prior acts of transmitting videos of VM are admissible to show the defendant's motive to take revenge on women who leave his group by harassing them by posting their sexually explicit videos to social media. Wherefore, the state's motion to admit evidence of the defendant's prior transmission of sexual explicit content is also granted. So ordered this May of 2024.
You gotta feel that heat, and we can ride the boogie, share that beat of love. I will rock you, dance you, out.
6-1 in the mix.
I love the way you activate your hips and push your ass out. Got a brother wanting this so bad I'm about to pass out. Wanna dig you, and I can't even lie about it, baby. Just alleviate your clothes, I'm the fly about it. Catch you at the club, your hips have got me feeling. Body talking quick to me, but I can't comprehend the meaning. Now if you wanna roll with me, then here's your chance to 180.